Welcome to Beyond the Music, the podcast where we dive into the lives and stories of people who shaped the world of music. I am Lena.
And I am Karina. We're both classically trained singers, and this podcast is our chance to explore the fascinating intersections of music, history, and humanity.
In our previous episode, Karina took us into the world of John Williams and all the movies where he composed music for. Exactly. From Jaws to Harry Potter and Star Wars. And today we explore the relationship between the composers Vaughan Williams and Gustav Holst.
So, Ralph Vaughan Williams and Gustav Holst, these two towering figures in British music history were more than just contemporaries. Their friendship, forged in 1895 at the Royal College of Music, would come to define and shape much of 20th century British classical music. Vaughan Williams, often called RVW by his friends, was born into a well-to-do family and came across as thoughtful, introspective, and serious about his mission to create music that spoke to the English soul. He was already a Cambridge graduate when he returned to London to study composition. Holst, on the other hand, was from a family with generations of musicians. Though physically frail due to neuritis that stopped him from pursuing the piano, he was intellectually curious, a bit more eccentric, and deeply passionate about Eastern philosophy, poetry, and astrology. Where Vaughan Williams was sturdy and reserved, Holst was lean and lively. Yet, they shared a passionate belief that English music deserved its own voice, one rooted in native traditions, rather than mimicking the dominant Germanic and French styles of the time. They began meeting regularly, sometimes even weekly, to discuss not only their compositions, but a wide range of ideas. This wasn't just a friendship. It was a partnership of the mind and spirit. They would read literature together, debate philosophical ideas, and challenge each other's musical instincts. And over the decades, that relationship remained a bedrock for both men, creative, intellectual, and profoundly personal.
It's incredible how such a contrast in personalities led to such a strong, enduring connection. They truly balanced each other out. And that creative bond never wavered, even when their careers took them in different directions. One of the most fascinating aspects of their friendship was how deeply they influenced each other's works. They weren't just colleagues, they were creative soulmates who trusted each other above all others. It wasn't uncommon for them to meet weekly just to exchange drafts, scrutinize scores, and offer candid, sometimes brutally honest feedback. They shaped each other's ideas from the ground up. Vaughan Williams once said, "We discussed every subject under the sun, from the lowest note of the double basson to the philosophy of Jude the Obscure." That quote alone shows how intellectually rich and creative, symbiotic their relationship was. Holst played a pivotal role in expanding Vaughan Williams' horizons. He introduced him to European modernists, because there were a few, like Ravel and Stravinsky, which directly influenced Vaughan Williams' decision to study orchestration with Ravel in Paris. This experience liberated Vaughan Williams from the heavy, sometimes rigid Germanic tradition he'd initially absorbed.
And it wasn't a one-way street. Vaughan Williams gave just as much in return. He encouraged Holst to dig into English folk traditions and sacred music. sources Holst had overlooked early on. That encouragement inspired some of Holst's most beloved compositions, like St. Paul's Suite and Hammersmith, which blend folk sensibilities with innovative orchestration.
Exactly. Their collaboration wasn't about competition, it was about evolution, mutual, honest, and deeply respectful. It's rare to see that level of influence between two composers unfold over a lifetime.
As their careers advanced, Vaughan Williams and Holst remained steadfast in their core values rooted in a deep sense of social responsibility and accessibility. Both men were socialists and humanitarians who saw music not as an elite pursuit, but as something to be shared with and by the broader public. They were firm believers that music should be a vital part of everyday life, not just reserved for the upper echelons of society. Vaughan Williams was a major proponent of community music making. He worked closely with the English Folk Dance and Song Society, championing traditional English tunes and integrating them into formal compositions that anyone could relate to. His music often carries the ethos of the English countryside and the voices of common people, like in The Lark Ascending, which evokes a sense of pastoral serenity, or Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis, which connects England's musical past with its modern voice. Now, Thomas Tallis was actually in the court of King Henry VIII. Holst, meanwhile, believed equally in democratizing music, and he pursued this mission through education. He taught at Morley College, an adult education institution, and at St. Paul's Girls' School, where he introduced his students to composers like Bach and Vittoria, instead of the expected sentimental fare. His approach was rigorous, yet uplifting. His teaching left a lasting legacy through students who went on to have distinguished careers, including soprano Joan Cross and composer Jane Joseph. Artistically, their paths diverged but remained complementary. Vaughan Williams gravitated towards spiritual and pastoral themes, while Holst explored the esoteric, drawing on astrology, mysticism, and Eastern philosophy in works such as The Planets and The Hymn of Jesus. These stylistic differences only highlighted the breadths of their shared mission to craft a music culture that was authentically British and emotionally expansive.
And despite those stylistic differences, their admiration for one another never wavered. Each saw genius in the other's work. Let's have some fun.
Oh, like we're not having any fun.
Yeah, like we're not. Holst was a real character. He taught himself Sanskrit, so he could read ancient texts in their original form.
Wow.
Was a committed vegetarian long before it became trendy, and once fell off a podium mid-rehearsal and gave himself a concussion.
No!
He was so embarrassed that he barely talked about it afterwards. He also dabbled in astrology, not because he believed in it religiously, but because he loved the poetic symbolism it offered. Hence, the planets.
And Vaughan Williams? He didn't find his voice until his 30s. Studied with Ravel in his mid-30s to shake off Germanic influences, and famously married his second wife at age 75. He was known for dressing in baggy, slightly disheveled clothes that looked like they belonged to a distracted professor. And he probably couldn't care less. He also loved walking the English countryside and collecting folk songs from everyday people. He'd even jot them down on the spot, notebook in hand.
Holst once tried to enlist in World War I, but was rejected for health reasons. Frustrated, he found other ways to support the war effort, while Vaughan Williams actually went to France and served as a stretcher bearer It's wild how differently their bodies held up, despite their equally determined spirits.
And here's a quirky one. Vaughan Williams once wrote a review of his own concert under a pseudonym so he could be honest without hurting any feelings. Talk about creative diplomacy.
Yeah, they may be musical giants, but it's their oddball quirks that really makes them feel human. You can almost imagine them laughing over tea and debating whether the double basson or the tambourine is more underappreciated.
I personally think that the triangle is the most underappreciated.
Of course it is, yeah.
Unfortunately, Holst passed away in 1934, and the loss hit Vaughan Williams deeply. He later referred to Holst as the greatest influence on his music, which speaks volumes given their nearly 4 decades of friendship and creative exchange.
It's remarkable, really. Their friendship wasn't just a personal connection, it helped shape the entire direction of British music in the 20th century. Without them, the landscape of English classical music would have looked very different.
Absolutely. They opened doors for future composers. Think Michael Tippett, Benjamin Britten, composers who carried their torch forward. But it wasn't just about composition. They believed that music belonged in schools, in community halls, in every corner of life.
And that belief still resonates today in choirs, music education, and public concerts across the UK. They weren't just composers, they were cultural builders. I hope you enjoyed the world of Vaughan Williams and Gustav Holst as much as we did. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Next time, we'll delve into another fascinating chapter of music history. Until then, keep listening and discovering the stories beyond the music. See you next time.